The WNBA just keeps on getting worse. Everybody, welcome back to another edition of Inside the Wolves here on Inside the Zone with Mateo. I'm so glad you decided to click on this video, and as always, I hope you were entertained. For those who may not know, my name is Mateo, and I host all the podcasts here on the channel where we normally talk all things Minnesota sports, but also just things sports in general. And Inside the Wolves is our NBA podcast where we talk all things Minnesota Timberwolves, and in this case, Minnesota Lynx, because, I didn't think I would actually ever do a podcast about the Lynx, but it's kind of about the Lynx, kind of about the WNBA, but also it's not really basketball. It's kind of a view that I just feel like I had to get my opinion on and just to speak it out into this platform that I am trying to build. So let's just sit back, relax, and enjoy. It's going to be an interesting one. Again, I didn't think I'd ever do something like this, but yet here we are, and we are doing it. So for those who may not know, the person on the left side of this thumbnail is Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeves. And then on the right is Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham. And they have had a recent clash over the last couple days, couple weeks, if you will, basically arguing if trans women should be able to participate in women's sports, be able to go to women's locker rooms, and so on and so forth. Now, I will obviously state my opinion on this, and I will try to explain why I believe so, why I believe what I believe. But before we do that, here's kind of exactly what you need to know. So this all started with Sophie Cunningham, actually. It didn't even start with Cheryl Reeves. It started with Indiana guard Sophie Cunningham. I believe she is technically a bench player for the Indiana Fever of the WNBA. Or she is a star. I'm not quite familiar. The only really NBA... I know a couple WNBA players, but I hadn't heard of her ever before this. Sorry, guys. I just don't really... I pay attention to so much other sports that I just sometimes don't have time for more sports because we got to try to be a little well-rounded, if you will. But she had this quote to say in, I believe, an ESPN article or something like that. But this is on Yahoo Sports. I don't know what that held up. And boom, there we go. Yahoo Sports. She said, quote, well, Yahoo Sports quotes her, but she said this, in an ESPN article, as you guys can see. Where's that quote? There we go. So she kind of goes on and saying, oh, well, I never once said I hate anybody or I hate trans. I just think I'm here to extend love, but I also think with that love is truth being honest. And then the major quote that made her, basically start this whole controversy, if you will, is she said this, quote, and I want to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in sports who shouldn't have to go against biological men, which to anybody with common sense, again, should make sense, right? You should not have a high school girl be playing against a high school guy in a competitive sports. Yes, you can have fun, play co-ed sports, and just kind of mess around with friends and stuff. That's fine. But when it's in a competition level, those two genders shouldn't clash on the court. It just shouldn't be. But of course, the WNBA and more importantly, Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeves, who has been strongly supporting the trans community herself for many years and all of those things that go along with the LGBTQ community, she, of course, had some words. She, of course, had some stuff to say to not just Sophie Cunningham, but also just, in a way, the world, because she's using this platform because it can get out. It got out all over the internet. So because she obviously disagrees with that. By the way, I just wanted to say they were able to talk through it. The Fever and the Lynx ended up actually playing each other, I believe, Sunday. They were able to talk to each other before the game. And I believe it was a decent discussion. I've only heard good things about it, really, from the players, from Sophie Cunningham and Cheryl Reeves. They were able to just kind of talk through it a little bit, and they've also expressed that it was super important that they did that in person, and it was really helpful for them to do it in person rather than hiding behind a screen. So I do want to applaud them for handling this this feud, if you will, this argument in person, because obviously that is the best way to handle it. But obviously they have their own views on these things. I believe it's this one. Yeah, here's what Sophie Cunningham had to say on that pre-game conversation. It's just an 18-second bit here on X.
What was your conversation with Cheryl like before that last game?
Oh, yeah, she just came up, and, I respect her for coming up in person. I think a lot of people hide behind screens and love that type of thing. She had stories about her point of view, and I had stories about my point of view, and we left with love and respect, and I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, so as you can see, she doesn't seem to be that annoyed anymore. Obviously, they disagree, but this is a good example of, hey, if you disagree, you got to handle it in the right way. You can't just yell at people. You can't just, scream at people and tell them they're wrong. Have a good conversation. Don't try to, be respectful, because people are going to disagree. People disagree every single day. But I think they did end up handling this a little bit well. Obviously, do I agree with Sophie Cunningham? Do I agree with Cheryl Reeves? I definitely lean toward the side of Sophie Cunningham more, but let us continue. Let's take a look at what Cheryl Reeves had to say about this whole statement of, trans women should be, basically she's saying trans women should be able to play in in women's sports. Basically, she's all about inclusion, she states. So let's watch a little bit of this interview. I believe it's just a practice interview. I think you can hear the Lynx practicing behind it at Mayo Clinic. So let's just see what she has to say. We're going to watch a little bit of this, like about a minute, and what she says, and then I will kind of start to talk and go on a little bit of, not a rant, but kind of explaining some stuff and doing that stuff. So I just want to give you guys all the facts first. As somebody who is trying to become a sports journalist, I do think it's very important that you get all the facts before I start to basically speak my mind, if you will.
As I said last week, I come from a space of inclusion, and the narrative that I think that is problematic is to suggest that number one, that transgender athletes are the biggest problem in women's sports. And I think this is what's bothersome, is that there's a faction of people in our country that are making this a massive issue. We have some issues. Number one, we need to protect trans kids. Every kid, to me, it's a human rights issue. Every kid has a right to sports, regardless of gender diverse, transgender. Every kid has the right to access. Now, what gets nuanced is, when you're beyond puberty, when you're an Olympic sport, when we have scholarships at state and that sort of thing. That's where I say that common sense people get together and you find common ground to find a way to be inclusive.
So there's just kind of a nice little bit about what she was stating, what she believes, how she's saying her number one priority is that all girls should have the opportunity to play a sport. All people should have the right to, play a sport. Which, to be honest, I do agree with. I will give her that credit. I do believe all people should have the opportunity to play sports. And guess what? Do schools have sports teams? Yes, they do. Are there boys teams? Yes. Are there girls teams? Yes. We already have those options, especially for teens, because she's talking about the teens, she's talking about the children. There's so many options. Really, I do see where she's coming from at the point of after college, after the collegiate level. You got the WNBA, you got the golf league, you got the tennis, you got, I think there's probably a pro softball league somewhere. There's pro soccer too. But there's definitely there's less professional women's sports leagues, which I get that. But all the way up to the collegiate level, women have such a massive slate of opportunities, if you will, right? They have so many opportunities to play sports. So the first thing that comes to my mind is people have the opportunity to play sports. There are guy sports, there are girl sports. Right? That's the first thing. Okay? Every single high school has at least a couple options, if not a lot. There's a boys and girls soccer team. There's a boys and girls tennis team. There's a boys and girls golf team. There's a boys baseball. There's a girls softball. There's gymnastics. There's football for guys, gymnastics for girls. You got hockey. I believe there's hockey teams for boys and girls as well. And so much more. So when she's saying there's not enough opportunities for everybody to be included, obviously I don't exactly want to say she's wrong, because she might be saying then at the professional level, because she is at the WNBA, and the WNBA is one of the only major women's professional sports, professional women's sports leagues. But at the same time, she was saying how it's important for these young people, and I want to find that quote again here. Every kid, yeah, right here.
Gender diverse, transgender, every kid has the right to access.
Every kid, she said, has the right to access a sport and the ability to play a sport. And to that I say, they do. But here's where it comes in. She's obviously speaking of transgender kids who, to be honest, it's a nightmare that is even a reality for some teenagers. That some teenagers whose brains are not fully developed, that are minors, are making these decisions to literally, quote unquote, change genders. And that's scary and that's horrifying for me, right? It's pretty bad. There's no need for that. As a believer in Christ, as y'all know, if you've been on this channel for a while, you know I'm a strong believer. I end every episode saying, don't forget to keep God first, because he's the most important thing in your life, because that's just a nice little reminder for me and for you that while sports is good, God is better. And God made two genders. In Genesis 1, when he's creating the world, he says, Moses writes, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. And then what? Male and female. He created them. He created two genders. He created men, he created women. If you were born a man, you were meant to be a man. God does not make any mistakes. If you were born a woman, you weren't meant to be a man, you were meant to be a woman. And God had a reason for that, because he's perfect and he never messes up. He never makes a mistake. We as humans make mistakes. He never makes a mistake. It's a mistake. It's literally a mistake to swap genders, because you're messing up what God had originally intended. You are messing up what God originally intended. He made you a man for a reason. He made you a woman for a reason. Whatever you were born as, doesn't matter what you think you were born as, it matters whatever you were born as. And we all know how to identify that. If you're born a man, you will always be a man. If you were born a woman, you will always be a woman. And now to this, I want to bring up something from the National Institute of Health. A test was done. A research project was done about the strength comparison of untrained men and trained women athletes. This, by the way, an official website of the United States government, National Institute of Health, National Library of Medicine. This is the doctors. These are the major doctors. These are the major researchers. And they did this study to figure out who was stronger, an untrained man or a trained woman athlete. They tested here, as you can see, the purpose was to compare untrained college men with trained collegiate women basketball and volleyball players in the terms of absolute and relative upper and lower body strength. 80 subjects were included in each group. Relative strength was expressed per unit of weight, height, and other things, as you can read there. And it was hypothesized, while men are significantly stronger than trained women athletes, such differences may be removed once body size characteristics are controlled. And here are the results. You ready for the results? Results indicate that untrained men have greater upper and lower body strength than trained women athletes in terms of both absolute and relative strength. Both, not just one, both. That means untrained men who are not in shape, maybe people who just sit at a desk all day or doing school all day. Untrained men are still stronger than trained women athletes. And I said, well, God said, technically, if you were born a man, you were born a man. If you were born a woman, you were born a woman. So you always are going to have these specific strengths. The male person is always going to be stronger than even a trained woman athlete. Excuse me. It's just a fact. This was done. This test, this research was done by the U.S. government, by the National Institute of Health. The best in the game when it comes to research and medicine and doctors and all that wonderful stuff. So when you're taking this into account, if a man transitions into a woman, which, by the way, it's so messed up. If they do that, it doesn't matter how much you try, you're still going to be stronger. Which means at the end of the day, if you have a trans woman who is a man, who has the body of a man and is a man, at the root, at the heart of that person, it is a man. They're going to be stronger. They're going to probably be faster. They're probably going to be better at a sport. Which means if you throw in this person, this individual, into a league like the WNBA, they are going to dominate the sport. They're going to dominate the sport. And I just don't know how somebody can think that that would be okay. And Cheryl Reeves is all about inclusion of women and making it all for the women. This would hurt the women. This would hurt them. It would hurt the sport. It would hurt their sport. And that is one of the main reasons Sophie Cunningham spoke up. Because if the WNBA were to allow this, which, to be honest, I would not be surprised. I would not be shocked if they end up doing this sometime in the next few years. Oh, man. Oh, man. The WNBA is one of the already the most hated leagues in professional sports. I think it would probably turn to be the most hated by a landslide. You see, if this were to happen, that trans woman, who is a man, born a man, always a man, and then if you continue to allow more to come, your sport's actually going to end up dying. You might think, Reeves, you might think it's good for the game and they're a woman. No. You're going to have a bunch of men playing in women's sports. And it is going to destroy the WNBA. Women are going to get hurt because they're not going to be able to absorb contact. The men are going to take all the rules away. And everything you're saying about inclusion is going to be thrown out the door because it's going to just be men taking over a women's sport. And then you're going to be coming back. You're going to be coming back after a couple of years of this and you're going to say, take them out. But you can't because you were the one who said, oh, we need it. Cheryl Reeves wants trans women who are teen boys who have transitioned to a woman to play in high school girls' sports. Not just the WNBA, but high school and college sports and Olympics. It just blows my mind. It blows my mind because everything they're saying about inclusion and all of this would be thrown out the door because men would be taking over women's sports. It's clear as day. Men are stronger. Men are faster. It's just the way God made them. God made men to be the main protectors, the lead of their house. The leader of their house, to protect, to sacrifice, to do all of that. Now, women can be protectors. They can still sacrifice their lives, and I respect all the women who are out in the law enforcement and all that stuff. Military. But at the end of the day, men are going to be stronger. It's a clear fact. An untrained man is stronger than a trained collegiate D1 level women athlete. The facts don't lie. The tests it's what happens. An untrained man would be able to lift probably more than a collegiate level women's athlete. Because it's just the way God made him. And God never makes a mistake. And we have men's sports for a reason, and we have women's sports for a reason. Because women should be going against women, and men should be going against men. Trans women should not be going against women. Because trans women are not women. It's as simple as all of this, and I hope this all makes sense. So at the end of the day, we must ask ourselves a question. Should men play in women's sports? And to that, I think a lot of people would say no. And I think you'd be foolish to say otherwise. So Cheryl Reeves, let me know. Should men play in women's sports? Because I don't think you would say yes. And then when you say, oh, well, but they're not a man. All right, let's compare a trans woman to a collegiate woman athlete. I'm pretty sure the trans woman's going to be much stronger, much faster, much quicker. Because that's just the reality. It's just the reality. You're all about inclusion, and you're going to be the one, along with the many people that think along the same lines, you're going to be the one to actually ruins women's sports even more. That's the question we, though, must ask these people that really believe trans women should be playing in women's sports. Because at the end of the day, to the trans women, they're still a man. They're still a man's body. There's not much you can do. You must ask them, should men play in women's sports? They would probably say no. And there you have your answer. The funny thing that I find about this too is that she says, we got to use common sense. Hear it right now.
Now, what gets nuanced is, when you're beyond puberty, when you're an Olympic sport, when we have scholarships at state and that sort of thing. That's where I say that common sense people get together and you find common ground to find a way to be inclusive.
And that's the thing. We have found common sense. We have found a common ground. You know what it is? It's men's sports versus women's sports. That's what it is. She's literally just, the more she talks, the more she is basically just proving us right, if you will. And by the way, I'm a 16-year-old guy. I don't know much, but I know enough. She's much older than 16. And I don't want to say, a 16-year-old knows more than you, because she probably knows a lot more than I do, because she's just lived longer. That's just how it goes. But if we're being completely honest, what she's saying is completely unethical, unreasonable, and what I'm saying makes a little bit more sense. But I don't want to come across that way. I just said, that's kind of a little bit of a bad look. But let's finish off this interview here. Let's see what else she has to say before we wrap this up. Appreciate you guys for watching. If you guys are still here, like that video, please hit this like button so we can get it pushed out more into the algorithm. Hit that subscribe button if you like more sports content. We'll be back providing more sports content throughout the week, but also episodes every Tuesday and every Thursday talking about Minnesota sports and all things Minnesota sports.
The answer isn't no. It is not the case that we have, quote, biological men in girls' locker.
Yeah, here's the thing. I kind of forgot about this because this was Sophie. There's just so much to go here. This was Sophie Cunningham's original thing. She said, quote, and I want to protect young girls in locker rooms or young girls in sports who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Imagine young girls in a locker room with a trans woman who is clearly a guy. Are men able to go in girls' locker rooms? No. Are girls allowed to go in men's locker rooms? No. It's for their safety. It's for their privacy. And people like Cheryl Reeves who say, we just want to be inclusive. We want to protect everybody. But my goodness, you're wanting to throw in a man into a woman's locker room. You want to throw in a teen boy, into a girl's locker room. We all know where that would end up. Not only would parents be mad, but the girls would be uncomfortable, and it would completely ruin girls' sports. So if you want to be a protector of girls' sports, women's sports, you can't have this. You can't have this. If the guy, the trans woman, if you will, whatever you want to call it, him, you want to call him, because it's a guy. If he's not good enough to compete in a guy's sport, so be it. It's something that we sometimes just have to deal with. Sometimes we're not good enough to be professional, and that's okay. We have a different calling then. You cannot just cheat your way, though, into playing in girls' sports to not just win and break all these records and win money and earn money, millions and millions of dollars, You're literally lying. You're literally cheating to win. No one likes a cheater. And that's what these people would do. But man, we need to protect these women and girls. Because they don't want this. Most of these people don't want this. These teenage girls don't want a guy in their locker room. It's just sick. It's sick.
The way it's being phrased, the innuendo there that somehow transgender women are predators of some kind in the locker room. There's a lot.
Because they are. Because they're not women. You said transgender women. Because they were a guy. They are a guy. They are a predator.
Narrative that is problematic that we need to address. That is simply not what's happening. I think we can take on the issue. There are more and more transgenders in our country as years go by. There's going to come a time. I've encouraged, years ago, I encouraged the WNBA leadership. What's our stance? What are we going to do when this occurs? Are we going to be ready? Are we going to be reactionary? And so I think it would make sense for our league to be leaders in this space. And there's again, I don't want to go so detailed. There's a lot of nuanced issues when it comes to science and hormone therapy, etc. I've chosen to educate myself about the space. I've chosen to listen to transgender families, and what I know is exclusion is not the answer. We've got to find the common ground and be inclusive. And that's a space, I think, if we all come from that. I also think like I said, the issue isn't as big as the issues that we have in women's sports. Whether it's cisgender men that have held us down for years in spaces like being able to have access to facilities and uniforms and locker rooms, all the things that these young girls that are sitting at games with anti-trans signs, do they understand actually what the real problems are?
Do I even need to have a rebuttal against that, guys? Did she just contradict herself yet again? She's saying, oh, these men have, for years have overridden us as women and have taken over our locker rooms, and we've not been able to have jerseys, uniforms, and locker rooms and facilities. And you want men to take over your sport? Because that's what would happen. I'm confident that's what would happen. Men cannot play in women's sports, and that's my final stance. And I think a majority of America feels this way, and it's only people in the WNBA, people with this belief that have it. At the end of the day, God made male and female. He created us in His image. What kind of God does that? Only the one true God. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And I want to end it here. Not with some, quote, should men play in women's sports, because at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. Are you trusting in Jesus Christ alone for the forgiveness of your sins? Are you trusting in Him? Because if you are not, and you're trusting in these woke ideas, all of these things, it is not going to end up well. We could go on a whole nother tangent of what God says about the LGBTQ community. Because He doesn't say it exactly, but He does say some things. And I think everybody knows what He says. God never makes a mistake. He made you a man. He made you a woman. Whatever you are, He made you that way. Whatever you were born as, that's what He made you. Okay? He made Cheryl Reeves a woman. He made me a man. Male, female, He created them. He in His image. And please, the call is not to get mad. We can have reasonable debates. We can have reasonable talks. I'm okay with that. But turn from your sins. Repent of your sins and trust and believe in God so that you can live with him in paradise. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. It's a little bit of a different podcast feel. It's not a sportsy. It's sports, but it's also not sports, if you will. I really do appreciate you guys for sticking around here. If you've made it to the end of this video, make sure you do hit that like button and subscribe button. Turn the notification bell button on so you never miss any other episodes. And comment down below what your thoughts are on this whole scenario, on just all your thoughts. As it's an interesting topic. And if you guys want more videos like this, let me know in the comments down below as well. And most importantly, as always, don't forget to keep God first because he's the most important thing in your lives. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Have a great day. Peace.